It's All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Tomorrow and Saturday, comedian and actor Kevin Nealon is back in town. He's going to be at the Blue Note. From his childhood in Connecticut to success on TV and in films, currently one of the stars of TV's Man with a Plan, vet of SNL for a number of seasons, films with Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, Jack Nicholson, David Spade, many others. He's our very special guest right now. Hey, Kevin, thanks for doing this, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
From reading about you, you had already gotten your bachelor's degree from Sacred Heart by the time that you had done some stand-up. When was it that you realized you had this tremendous gift, Kevin?
I don't know if it was a tremendous gift, but it was a desire that I had, which was tremendous. And I think that's really what you need to kind of make it in this business. You really have to be willing to kind of fail and pick yourself up and keep at it. But I always liked telling jokes. When I was a kid, I liked making people laugh growing up. I would memorize jokes and tell them and stuff. And I got my BS in marketing in college. And then after that, I moved out to Los Angeles and started going to the open mic nights and just developing an act and a style.
After your bachelor's, weren't you taking some courses at Fairfield University where I read you became the starting quarterback on their football team?
Yes, I love sports. I love football, and I never played on a high school team, but I played sandlot football with my buddies, and we played these rival gangs, these gangs across town, and we had all the equipment and stuff, and we really played hard, no refs. And then I played some rugby, too. So I was ready to play football on a team. And my buddy found out that if we took a night course at Fairfield University, just 3 credits, that would qualify us to play football. So we both signed up for a course in criminology. And I think we went twice. And we got to play on the team. We had a uniform, and the starting quarterback got hurt. So I got to quarterback. And I got to say, I had a really good arm. You know, I could really hum that ball. So I played the full season and got MVP, and my buddy got All-American. You know, from then I moved out to Los Angeles, and my goal was to get into stand-up comedy, but also try out for the LA Express, which was a USFL football team at the time. It was a league it's defunct now, but I was going to become the kicker, and I thought that would be my hook as a stand-up, as to, oh yeah, he's a stand-up, but he's also the kicker for the LA Express. My career took off before tryouts, so I'm walking still.
Right, before you could get hurt. I mean, it could have gone a whole different way. Or you could have made a whole bundle of cash and just been retired your whole life, I guess.
That's true.
And what makes you make the transition to California?
Yeah, that's a great question. What happened was I knew that they had stand-up comedy clubs in California, and I ventured into New York City to just get a feel for it. And I went to a club called the Catch a Rising Star. And the experience was such an eye-opener for me because it was so crowded in the rooms. All these New Yorkers in there smoking, you know, the stage was a small stage, and the comics up there were just these abrasive kind of New York comics, you know. I remember at the time it was people like Richard Belzer.
Right.
I mean, even Larry David was a stand-up at the time. And I thought, oh, my God, I can't do this. And I knew that California had the reputation for being more laid back and a little more gentle, so I thought I'd drive out to California.
A little more gentle, a little less Andrew Dice Clay and more Pauly Shore, I guess. And you debuted, it's funny because just the other day, totally different cat, Kenny G, but he actually did his debut on a national audience is the same as yours. His was on Johnny Carson. Is that really where you got your chance to debut?
I don't think it was my debut, but it certainly was the highlight of my career, even to this point, even after Weeds and SNL, because as a stand-up back then, doing the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and getting called over to sit on the couch afterwards was a real feather in your cap. But I think my debut was probably on the Merv Griffin show, or even David Letterman had a show. I think it might have been David Letterman before Johnny.
All these heavy cats. It's still Merv. That's a really, that's a big one.
And it was a great entry-level kind of TV show to do, too, because it wasn't the Tonight Show. You know, and,
right. Warm you up for that.
Afternoons. Yeah, so there was the Merv Griffin show and the Mike Douglas show.
Right.
So I did both of those.
That's great, though, with Johnny. For a guy like you, I'm assuming you're looking at him as not only is this a great gig to get to be on, but he's also kind of a funny cat with a personality. Did he appreciate your work at that time?
He really did, and he was so quick, and he was the kind of talk show host, too, that would set you up, and he wasn't always trying to get laughs. You know, like a lot of hosts now, they just want to be the funny one, but he was so great at that.
It wasn't too long after that your friend Dana Carvey brings a huge opportunity to you, which is probably how a lot of people listening come to know you.
Yeah, Dana was a buddy of mine. We knew each other from the stand-up comedy clubs. We also shared a home when he was in town from San Francisco. When he was down in L.A., he would live in the studio apartment above the garage in a house I was renting in the Hollywood Hills with a couple other comics. Then he got selected to be on SNL that summer, and he called me like a month afterwards, before the season started. He goes, "Hey, Lorne Michaels is looking for one more cast member. I mentioned you, and so they might want to see your tapes." That was kind of exciting because I was never pursuing that because I wasn't a sketch player, or I didn't do impressions or accents or anything. So I flew in for an audition, and they hired me from that because it was the chemistry. They were going off of people that knew each other. And
so it had a lot to do with just that interpersonal dynamic. And if you knew somebody, you already had a rapport with them, then it made it easier. 9 seasons, is that what you ended up doing?
9 seasons, yes. I worked with Dana, who I knew, and also with Jan Hooks, who I was dating at the time. So it was pretty coincidental that we all got on.
Incredible. And you were dating beforehand or after as a result?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
A year before and then a year during.
Did something like that just kind of tear it apart or not?
I think it would have been torn apart either way.
Mr. Subliminal, the subliminal message man, Franz from Hans and Franz, Mr. No Depth Perception, of course, Weekend Update anchor. How does things happen there? You have ideas for things, they have ideas, writers, and certainly the Weekend Update thing. I mean, describe a little for people on the outside who are curious and are fans. How does stuff develop and or do you get roles?
Things develop in all different ways, and you come up with characters, in different ways too. I would get to the point where I just walk into the video stores at the time, just to look at titles of videos or log lines and try to get ideas from that. Or you'd be talking to somebody and you'd overhear a conversation at the diner, or you'd see somebody in the street, a character.
Very organic is how it sounds.
Yeah.
What's weird is there's so many cats from the SNL thing that you've ended up doing stuff with outside of there, and not necessarily people that you were working with at the time. But like, for example, Roxanne, Steve Martin, Daryl Hannah, first movie, yeah?
Yeah.
Was Steve an influence, and how do you end up in a movie there with him?
Well, Steve was a total influence for me. I loved his stand-up comedy. It's one of the reasons I got into it. And so I kind of got that movie before I got on SNL. I did that movie the summer right before I got on SNL that fall. That was just an audition. They were using a lot of stand-up comics for that. And to this day, we're friends. We play the banjo together and have lunch together here and there.
Wow. Because he plays like that bluegrass stuff. You jam with him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, I've been playing since I was 18.
You happen to be bringing that when you come to town, or no?
No, I don't play that on stage really. But I did get a ukulele the last time I was in Hawaii, and I've been playing that. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's easy to take with you too, right? You just shove that kind of
so light, yeah.
And another one of those cats with an affiliation sort of connection to you, Dan Aykroyd, obviously Coneheads. You were appropriately in that. Is that a link through having done the show, or is that just totally separate?
Yeah, I think that was probably a link through the show.
That got you that?
Yeah, I think probably Lorne Michaels had them use a lot of us, and I didn't have a very big part in that movie, but it was fun to be part of it.
Yeah, still, it's something to put on your, come on, compared to most cats who are listening, who are like, well, I didn't have a part in any movie, let alone,
that's right.
let alone a small part in one with Dan Aykroyd. Hello. And you mentioned that Steve was an influence. Who are some of the other cats?
The 3 big guys that influenced me were Steve Martin, Albert Brooks, and Andy Kaufman, because they were so unique.
One thing I know about you, as a final thing to mention with you, is causes you're touched by, and it looked like something that we definitely share, and that would be animals.
Well, I became aware of animal abuse and cruelty by reading. My wife was an animal activist. My ex-wife, I started reading up about factory farming and slaughterhouses and things like that. I just didn't want to be part of that. So I got involved with PETA and some other organizations. I do a lot of fundraisers for shelters and try to raise awareness about overpopulation and benefits of spaying and neutering. It's funny, I was in Maui 25, 30 years, I can't remember what it was, and I was staying over on the Hana side, and I saw a dog there that was running around the resort I was staying at. And the next day I saw the same dog. It was like a border collie, and his back leg was all mangled and hanging off. And the manager of the hotel said he probably belongs to one of the ranchers, and he probably got hit by a car, and the rancher will probably just shoot him. So my wife and I took him to the vet and got the leg fixed and got him all dewormed and everything. And I called Gary Shandling, who had been at the same resort about a week before, because he was talking about a dog that he ran into. And he goes, describe the dog to me. That sounds like the dog I ran into, and I was going to take him home. But then when I was chasing him to get him to the plane, I stepped in a hole in the field, and I sprained my ankle. So wow. I explained, I described the dog, and he goes, that sounds like the same dog. Will you bring him over to me I just want to see if it's the same dog. And, so we brought the dog back with us from Hawaii in a crate, fixed his leg, and that was the same dog, it turns out, that Gary ran into. And so, we gave him to Gary. And he had that dog for about, 12 years. Loved him.
What a killer story. What a great connection to the islands, and what great insight into the kindness that's underneath some major Hollywood cats that we've all grown up with. I love it. Giving you a hug, a high five.
This was great, man. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, too. Thanks for helping out the animals and the great story about the dog from Maui that's gigantic.
Thanks, buddy. Aloha.
Aloha, Kevin.
Aloha, everybody. It's Kevin Nealon. I want you to grab that knob and rip it off the radio right now, because you're in the best place possible with my best friend and fellow animal lover, Dave Lawrence.